Hello friends, welcome back to Kevin's Sonic Sketchbook, where I just take ideas and throw them at the wall and see what happens. In the last 3 episodes, we've been working on this same track, the Not So Great Escape, and we got guitars recorded, we got some synths in there. I think that we're going to try to do some light mixing, maybe throw in some vocals, and I'm not a great singer, but that's why we have vocoders, and they sound pretty cool. So let's play through one time what we have. If you haven't heard it enough times in the last video, we're going to do it one more time, and then we'll see what inspiration we can find. So let's take a listen. So I've already gone through, cleaned up these guitars a little bit because there's quite a few mistakes. And first thing that jumps out to me is this tambourine. It's a loop, and if you look at it, there's an initial hit before the rest of the tambourine plays out. I don't really want that hit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to just use some EQ to cut those lows. Jump over here. Have my EQ8, and if we just play this section out, it'll show us what frequencies are in it. Hide this first one, turn this into a shelf, and we'll roll it up. Now we're losing a lot of information here, but we just want that kind of dingly sound anyways, because we already have a main beat going. So you can still kind of hear it, but I think in the mix, it'll be very faint. Okay, so that's good for now. And then this beat, I definitely want to add some excitement in the chorusy section because it's very basic. A simple way to do that, I think, is to copy this and layer it. But I'm only going to layer it on the 4th beat. It's something I hear a lot in Michael Jackson's music or his older music. And I just thought it was a cool trick to add some interest and some excitement. Oh, we can do a ride on every first beat and copying it over. Let's play this out. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to want that on every beat, every quarter note. Duplicates. And I'm going to mess with the velocity a little bit just so it's not so robotic. Maybe have it kind of trail down as it goes. We're going to copy. And we'll play it through. That's cool. I'm going to rename this while I'm here. Differentiate. So in the interest of arrangement, we might not do the whole track today, but I'm going to loop these beats and I'm going to make changes to them since I'm already kind of in that mode. And I do love adding toms. So I'm just going to play this alone. dun, dun. So the second one might be too much. Let's try that. Okay, and we're gonna do that maybe every second. Pretty low. All right, so just for fun, change up the next verse when we get there. Okay. So in the interest of mixing, this might be unorthodox. I'm not sure how other people work, but I do like using utility. It's this tool right here. It's an audio effect. It lets you change the width, swap the left and right channels, mono, which is fantastic, and adjust gain. So it's a pretty useful little tool. And I just slapped that on basically every track. Except this simple piano here, that was just my guide when we were initially writing the song. But I'm not going to mess with it right now, but I do like to point that out. You might see it as we flip back and forth between our tracks. So now that we're done with this one, I'm going to look at the bass, and this is a very simple bass sound. It's supposed to sound like an electric bass. A real instrument always has more nuances and little subtle changes that affect the way it sounds, right? And it comes down to how the performer plays the instrument. And that's their tone and their style, and all that shines through. With MIDI, it's a little more restricted. You obviously do have velocity control, and you can do pitch bends and all those kinds of things. But a cool thing to do also is layer your bass sounds. So since this is supposed to be just kind of a basic electric bass sound, we can find a little more filtery synth sound and use that as a second layer. And that'll kind of give it a little bit more bite, a little bit more movement that maybe will be lacking with the fact that it's just a MIDI instrument. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. We'll call it synth bass. And now the way I tend to save these as I save the Ableton Live clips, and I'll just drag them over into the folders. So when you drag them back into session, it wants to make a whole track. And the useful thing about that is it'll copy over all the parameters that were in that track, the whole instrument and any effects that you have inside of it. So I copied that over. I'm going to paste it in here. Now we've got our wavetable bass. So much louder. And we can just have you kind of in the back. I might lower this one too. And then I'm going to group them so I can apply some effects. I want to do like an amp sim. And our cab in it, because amp and cab go together. Bass, bass, bass. I'm just going to do 50 for now. So that's kind of loud. Or like I said, we're not really mixing yet. We're just trying to get our sounds together. Kind of make our instruments sound the way we want them to sound. When I brought this key patch in, it already had a whole bunch of effects tied to it. I must have saved it in the past, which is great because, you know, it saves time. I've got a whole convolution reverb, some analog drive, and some low cut. And we're using this as our piano sound. It's giving us those chords in the front, or in the beginning. That already sounds kind of cool. I might just add some delay to it, just to give it a little bit of a dubby kind of style. And so let's put something nice. That's way too much, and it's too long. Cool, and lower the feedback a little bit. And this is one where I'm just going to go ahead and widen it a little more. Cool. Easy peasy. Our lead. This is an Ableton effects that's kind of built in already, so it already has a lot of stuff configured and it has the macros set up. So you don't have to rebuild a whole bunch of stuff. I might just mess with the macros a little bit. Overdrive, a little bit more unison. Now that I'm playing this, I'm hearing the drums, and I was like, I should introduce the toms at the end of the chorus so that when you hear them in the verse, it's not so drastic. Kind of like introducing little elements here and there. I think I used the tom low. Dum, dum, dum. It's kind of landing on the kick. Well, maybe I'll even drop this kick here. Okay, cool. I'll just play with the volumes a little bit. First one, I'll make it louder. All right, onward. These horns are bare and basic, and I think this might be an Ableton patch as well. I might have just saved it as a favorite because I don't remember making this. Bum, bum. I do want it to have a bit more of a unison sound, kind of like an ensemble. I'm going to crank this a little bit more. Let's say 5. We'll make this like 33. Okay. I want to add some harmonics to it. So let's add a little drive. Let's use pedal. I like this preset that I have, Synth Lead Lushner. I'm just going to say like 21. body there. Maybe a little more. I want it to be a little more solid. Okay, better. Thinking for this base, I did want to add a filter to this guy right here. I thought it before and I didn't do it, and then I forgot and I just remembered. So let's do it now. I'm going to lower the filter. It's getting a bit much. Oh, that's probably why. There we go, now I hear it. Okay. There, got that weird whompy sound, and now I can put this back up. Okay. Put that in the mix. So it's really subtle, but it just gives it a little bit of that movement. And then the guitars. Oh, the guitars. I mentioned I cleaned them up a little bit. I moved some stuff around. They sound okay. And the pedal that I use, it has already an amp sim built into it, so I'm not going to reapply an amp to it. If I had a clean recording of just the electric guitar, then yeah, I would probably do that. But for now, we're going to work with what we have. And then I realized I want this to fade more. So, I don't know that I'm going to change much with this. Probably cut some lows out at least to start. Okay, I lowered them down a little bit. I wanted the leads, the synths to shine through a little more. Fix these colors. I jump around a lot. That's just the way my brain works, I guess. But we're getting there. Now, there is an element that I would like to add, and like I mentioned before, I'm not a singer. But I do have this vocoder set up, and I'll show that to you. I like a lot of Black Moth Super Rainbow, at least the early stuff. I haven't heard much of the new stuff, but this is kind of inspired by that. So we have our classic vocoder. I keep the bands around 24, and I cut it off around 8 kilohertz at the top end. I have that going into an EQ, rolling off some of those lows and a little bit of the highs to give it a little bit of a lo-fi flavor. A little redux, just to give it some grit. And then some distortion to even it out a little bit. So let's pick a carrier and then pray, I guess. And a secondary function of keeping the chords here to track the song, could also just use them as the basis for the notes. Let's give that a shot. Gotta make sure we set this up. Carrier. I think it's on. Delete. So I'll show the lyrics on screen, but basically I ran through it a couple times, had to adjust the words, try to get the timing. And like I said, I'm not a singer, but I'm just trying to express myself. So let's give it a shot. Okay, so not the rhythm I originally intended, but we can always just run through this multiple times until we get what we want. Okay, so I'm gonna rerun it again, but those chords are too much. They were like clipping and it was getting annoying. And I just threw a little variation. I kind of made some single lines and moved the octave on a few of them to give it some pop in certain areas. I'm going to run through this one more time. I'll just move it to the side for now. And we'll give it another shot. think the timing was a little better on that one. I managed to get the verse in more appropriately. And there is a mix knob on this, so forgive me for my vocals, but what we're gonna do is just copy this down, and that way we can affect them a little differently. And having a clean vocal does give it some clarity and return some of the presence you lose with the vocoder. And what I'll probably do here is steal this one and maybe crank it a little more. So clipping, and we'll drive it. And I think we had this around 80-ish or so. So I'm just gonna put that back. I fell in love. I fell in love with grief. My thoughts entered my mind and wouldn't leave. Made myself believe I'd escape from reality when I found a scene, a tragedy, no way to see the silver track laid down in front of me. That's obviously going to take a lot of work to blend it, and obviously there's a little bit of hesitation on my part to have my natural vocals come through. Like I said, I'm not a singer, but it's all a learning process. So thank you guys for watching this episode. I don't know if we'll revisit this same song for the next one or we'll try something a little different. We'll see how it goes, but thank you for watching. Consider subscribing if you like this, and I hope you learned something. Have a great day.